We let you off easy Monday when we wished you a happy 2017. Now it's time to talk New Year's resolutions. And before you squirm about smoking or that great new diet that starts tomorrow, here's a 21st century habit that as of January 1st, the French state is happy to help you break. Citizens now have the right to disconnect after hours from work. Easier said than done when the smartphone is just sitting there on the kitchen counter. And even if you have the self-discipline to say non to the boss, how to resist subtle pressure from peers? After all, the new law doesn't impose penalties on offending companies, which brings us to a paradox. Those surveys that show we want more privacy and a clearer separation between work and personal life are up against the trend. Smart homes, all the rage at this year's Consumer Electronics Show, which opens Friday in Las Vegas. Which is it? How badly do we really want to unplug, if at all? Today in the France 24 debate, the right to disconnect. With us, her upcoming book is called Hustle and Float. It focuses on tensions between productivity and creativity. Ralph Harfouche, the founder of the Thread with a D.
Yes.
Institute for Digital Culture. Welcome back as well to Fabrice Appelboin, who teaches information warfare at the French Political Science Institute, Sciences Po. Nice to see you. Emmanuel Leneuf, the founder of the digital news show, I guess I would call it, a digital news show called Flash Tweet.
Yes, on Twitter.
On
every morning at 7:30.
At 7:30
Local
Paris time.
Paris time.
Okay. And Emma France, co-founder of the Education Lab, a forum that brings together teachers, students, and all those involved in the learning process, and currently researching a dissertation on the future of work. Thank you for being with us.
You're welcome.
The France 24 debate, where you can tell us about your plugged-in existence on Facebook and Twitter, the hashtag F24debate. It was part of that big labor reform bill that was passed in this country over the course of last year. Officially, though, it went into effect on January the 1st. That right to disconnect. Anke Huber explains.
A work email on Sunday afternoon or a text in the middle of the night. In France, surveys show almost 40% of employees don't disconnect entirely and regularly work during their free time. But as of January 1st, a new rule has come into play as part of last year's controversial labor market reforms. It introduces the right to disconnect into law for the first time, the ability to be unavailable or unreachable outside of working hours. The law calls on companies to establish regulations for the use of digital tools in order to ensure the respect of rest time and vacation, as well as personal and family life. It is based on the principle of rest time, laid out in the European Union's Working Time Directive, which requires a minimum daily rest period of 11 consecutive hours in every 24. Each year, companies with more than 50 employees must hold negotiations to define how to regulate digital communications. Suggestions made by the Labor Ministry include organizing email-free days or training for people on the dangers of being constantly switched on. But crucially, the new French law has no fixed limits and no penalties for non-compliance. If disagreements arise during negotiations, the employer can develop a code of conduct without the worker's approval.
No penalties. Let me begin with you, Fabrice Appelboin. Are you guilty as charged when it comes to checking your emails in the middle of the night and that kind of thing?
Totally guilty. The thing is, no penalty in the law. Who cares about the law if there's no penalty? Certainly not companies. Nobody's going to apply this.
Nobody's going to apply this, Ralph Harfouche? Because we've seen in neighboring Germany, companies have instituted this.
I mean, I think the good thing about this law is at least it opens up the conversation to the right of disconnection. I think we have been touting the pros of technology for so long, the ability to work anywhere, to do our work from no matter where we are in the world. And I think this is just a very good beginning to a conversation about countermeasures in order to maybe take back some of that personal time.
And to Fabrice's point that, it's got to have a bit of teeth, this bill, to be effective.
That I agree. I'm hoping that once people get a chance to sort of have these conversations in companies, that it will create better opportunities for more positive policies.
Emma France, your thoughts, is this going to put, I should say, social pressure on bosses and appears to lay off employees, or is it really ineffective until you actually build on this? And
I think this is the beginning of the debate, and this is a good opportunity for companies to adapt it to their context, their culture, because the culture of enterprise is very different from one another, and how you may apply it may differ from, a lot. And it's, I think this is really important that companies take this opportunity to think more about incentives and how they could implement incentives to change this kind of social behaviors that employees may have towards hierarchy or between.
So what does it tell you, the fact that in Germany, it's big corporations like Volkswagen that are implementing this, and in France, it's not a company, but the state that has to do this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the context when it comes to labor and labor partners, especially all the partners that you have on social issues within the firm are very different, and the firms are more likely to have specific discussion within one industry, whereas in France, it's more, it comes from the state, so it's more of, it depends on the country, I mean, and it cannot be compared on the way it works. But in Germany, it's very, very difficult in a sense, because they shut down the servers from certain hours in the night. They even erase emails that are sent when you're not supposed to receive ones. So this is, further on the road as it is in France now.
Is that something you'd like to see in France? Companies that erase your emails if you send them at the wrong hours?
No, I'm not sure. I just think it's more about how you change the games and how you may incentivize people to change their behaviors.
Emmanuel Leneuf, you've just said your own job description means being online all the time, right?
Yeah, so I'm guilty also.
So are you learning how to change your behavior when it comes to this?
I should, yes. I should, but it's the beginning of my, new professional adventure, because I'm, building a media, and so I've got to be connected. But I just wanted to say that there are companies that have implement in France some charter. I don't know how to say in English, but like chart, like
charters,
yeah. Like La Poste. Or
the post office,
La Poste, yes, the delivery mail company. So there are companies like Rionica that are dealing with the problem. So Allianz France,
insurance company, yeah.
Yeah, they don't send email to the smartphone after a certain hour. So there's like a prise de conscience, like something it's got to be done. And,
it's starting to get dawn on the consciousness of people. Fabrice Epelmoin, which brings us back to the original point you made. If you don't have punitive measures, the law doesn't work. Well, companies are ahead of the curve, it sounds like. They're realizing that they don't want their employees to burn out, and so they'd like them to tune out from work during certain hours.
Well, it depends on the company. Some other companies are trying to reinvent the way we work. Most companies coming from the collaborative economy are trying to really think work in a very different way, and this digital disconnection.
Explain to us what the collaborative economy means.
Work on demand, basically. It's Uber is the flagship of unfortunately, the unfortunate flagship of this new economy. Basically, a platform providing work on demand for anybody willing to work. My company works this way, and we provide work for hackers who want to test some system, and they can do this whenever they want. But the first one to arrive on the platform is the first one to be served in terms of work. So, of course, it's not really compliant with this new way in the law to see work as something you have to stop for 11 hours straight. It will have some negative impact on the collaborative economy, although it will probably have a small, nice impact on the traditional way of doing work.
Okay, but maybe I should be playing devil's advocate here, because when I used to work at a sports news website, there was always more work to do. There's never
Always.
a deadline.
The
There's
difference
always
is you were a
and it-
salaryman, so you had a fixed amount
No,
of
but
money.
maybe
at
it's
the
a
end
good
of the month.
idea to put these to revert
Honestly,
to the
if
EU
there's no
rule
penalty,
of
then
what is it,
it's not
11
a good
hours of rest in 24, as you say.
Yeah, sounds like a good idea for, the average guy. If you have a relationship to work, which is the more you work, the more you make money, which is what you do when you drive a car for Uber, then you might want something else. And you can adapt the way you work to what you really want in life, instead of having the state telling you what's good for you, which is a very French way of doing things.
All right, so make the case, Ralph Arfouche here. How do you tell an Uber driver to rest 11 hours out of 24?
I don't think it's a question of forcing somebody to work in a particular way. And I think the collaborative economy in Uber is a bit of a different category. I think this rule and this law is much more interesting towards traditional organizations, because what we're seeing here is a huge shift between the way that we have measured work. The history of how we have measured work has always depended on productivity systems that were based on people working in factories. And as now we work in the knowledge economy, as more people, accountants, marketers, HR, journalists are focused on problem solving, are focused on non-standardized tasks, it's an entirely different way of working. So we cannot keep treating our brains like machines that we can turn on and turn off. And most companies, with their philosophy of pushing and pushing, think that making people work longer is going to have them work better or work more. And in reality, as we've heard from a lot of people, what happens is you get burned out, you get overworked, and the quality of your work actually decreases. So I think this is a case that applies much more to traditional organizations rather than the flexible ways and new ways of the collaborative economy. I think this is going to be much more disruptive to the average salary person who works their 40-hour week, their 50-hour week, and then goes home and is still expected to answer emails from their boss. And the point that you made is, I think, the one we should really be digging into, which is not so much the government policy or even the company policy, but it's the subtle pressure that socially we face from our colleagues and from our work environment, because the way that we work is historically very much tied into how we see our worth as employees and as people, and how we judge and evaluate each other from a social perspective as well.
All right, reactions coming in on the hashtag F24 debate. Our friend and journalist Craig Capita saying, pure French piffle, a law is meaningless without enforcement. I mean, I don't know what kind of enforcement you would enact. And do you enact enforcement, picking up on the point Rahaf just made, against peers? I mean, I saw further sign to me that the apocalypse was upon us was when they started introducing Wi-Fi on airplanes, where you thought that was the one sort of safe haven when it comes where you weren't reachable.
As a traveler in airplanes, I was very sad because I love the fact that airplanes are disconnected, but that's just for me. And I think this is really this kind of disconnection and how it should be enforced or not is really, it could be the same for other issues within the firm. For instance, holidays. Some firms have decided to give people unlimited holidays. And then they realized that people were not taking them, that they were taking less holidays than when they had a fixed 5-week holidays per year. So then they incentivized. These were firms like Netflix or Evernote, so big startups in the US. And so when they realized that, they implemented incentives, and it's kind of a $1,000 fees, or payments when you go on holidays. So it's like a reward, letting you know that you have the right, and it's okay on a social basis within the firm.
And picking up again on Raf's point, okay, that's the employers, but what about the peer pressure from people, again, when you're working in those traditional parts of the economy where you might have several people working on a project, say, and,
Yeah, I think this is really the thing about incentives, and what I meant by that is that we have a labor law that is great, and this is a kind of a pretext to begin and start a debate. And then I think the thing that is very important within companies right now is to define a collective work ethics. and how people want to work in a firm. And this is also very important because young people are going to join a firm based on how they will be treated and how well-being for employees is considered.
Collective work ethic. But again, you're the one who said it. Here we are in top-down France, where people just do what the boss tells them to do.
Yeah, but you need to know step by step. I mean, change of culture, and especially this kind of change, needs time. And I really think this comes with changing behaviors, and so doing it like being aware that we need to change it, and this law brings that, with no doubt for me. And then we need to help people discuss about it and about everyone's behavior towards this matter, because people behave very differently when it comes to being connected to.
It sounds, listening to what Emma France just said, that the French are going to have to change the way they, not only they view time, but also the way they view their colleagues and their bosses.
Yeah, I think that things are changing in France, and especially in the work sphere. And people are also told to go to Twitter and to be on Twitter, to be on LinkedIn, and so this is a big question, the right to disconnect, and because in the companies, people will have to be more and more connected. So it's important to set up rules as we said, because in companies you can set up rules, but you are free not to obey the rules.
Fabrice Epelbois, this idea of getting people together to determine what is the corporate culture when it comes to all of this and doing it in a collaborative fashion, is it mission impossible in France?
In France, in traditional company, sounds really difficult. To be really honest, I had my own company for the past 22 years, so I don't really know what's happening in the...
Were you a slave driver?
Honestly, I had startup for the last 22 years, so yes, I guess I can say yes, I was.
But now, because of the fact that time is expandable, right? Mm-hmm. Have you sort of rethought the way that you mete out work to your...
I live in
are you more
such
careful?
A work environment for really since the early 90s. We had emails, we were doing startup, we were working from home, and I've been doing this for 2 decades. It certainly isn't the most healthy way.
But do you ever say to yourself, "Hey, I've got to cool it with my employees here, and because I don't want them to burn out"?
Honestly, no. I probably should have, but really, honestly, no. The fact that I've been hiring young employees didn't really impose such measures. Today, I'm in the collaborative economy, so I'm not working with those rules anymore. But the thing is, I must admit, it's not a really healthy way to work.
All right,
for sure.
Changing rules, perhaps in the workplace, changing rules at home as well when it comes to being connected. We'll talk about that when we come back. You're watching the France 24 debate.